The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, laughter, and the false promises of wealth. Alexander Knight, heir to the vast Knight Enterprises empire, stood in the center of it all. At only 32, he had built a reputation of being untouchably powerful, cold, and ruthless in business. Yet behind his polished tuxedo and arrogant smile, a storm brewed. His chest felt heavy, each breath shallow, but he ignored it, raising another glass of champagne to the endless congratulations showered upon him for sealing yet another billion-dollar deal. Money and power had been his shield for years, and he refused to show weakness. But weakness had its own way of forcing itself out. The music blurred, lights dimmed, and suddenly Alexander's legs buckled beneath him. Gasps echoed through the hall as the heir to the Knight fortune collapsed onto the marble floor. The last thing he heard before darkness claimed him was someone shouting his name. When he woke, the room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines. A hospital ceiling loomed above him, sterile, white and merciless. His throat felt dry, his limbs heavy. Slowly turning his head, he noticed his longtime friend and legal advisor, Marcus, standing near the window with a grim expression. "What happened?" Alexander asked, his voice hoarse. Marcus turned, hesitant. "You collapsed. The doctors say it's stress, exhaustion, but Alexa, broken bar, your body's been under strain for years. If you don't slow down, it won't just be a collapse next time. It could be the end." Alexander scoffed, wincing at the ache in his ribs. "I don't have time to slow down." "Knight Enterprises, to hell with the company," Marcus interrupted, surprising him. "You need to face what you've been running from." Alexander narrowed his eyes, a muscle ticking in his jaw. Marcus's words weren't about business. They were about the past, of the one secret Alexander had buried so deeply that even he pretended it never existed. 3 years ago, before he hardened into the man the world feared, Alexander had disappeared from the city for a month. Away from the boardrooms and flashing cameras, he had lived like a man, not an heir. It was in a small coastal town that he met Hera Isabella Hart. She wasn't like the society women who trailed after his money. Isabella was warmth, laughter, and stubborn independence. She owned a tiny bookstore and spoke to him as if he were nobody, just a man browsing dusty shelves. Against his better judgment, Alexander had fallen for her. Their romance was whirlwind, reckless, and secret. And in a moment of impulsive devotion, he had married her. No prenup, no publicity, just vows whispered beneath the stars. But fear had destroyed it. When the board threatened to strip him of power if he didn't maintain the image of a ruthless, single tycoon, Alexander chose the empire over love. He had walked away from Isabella without an explanation, severing contact, convincing himself it was for her own good. What he didn't know then was that he had left behind more than a wife. Yeah, he had left behind a child. Now, lying in a hospital bed, Marcus's gaze told him everything. "She came to see you, Alex." Isabella. She wasn't alone. Alexander's pulse spiked. "What do you mean she wasn't alone?" Marcus sighed. "She has a son, 3 years old. His name is Noah. He's your son." Silence slammed into the room. The heart monitor's beeping grew erratic as Alexander struggled to process. A son. His son. The memory of Isabella's tearful eyes the night he left stabbed at him. He had abandoned her. Abandoned them both. For the first time in years, Alexander Knight felt powerless. He shoved the blankets aside, ignoring Marcus's protest. "I have to see them now." Finding Isabella wasn't easy. She had left the city, building a quiet life where his shadow couldn't reach. But Alexander had resources, and determination burned through his veins stronger than any weakness in his body. Within hours, he was standing outside a modest suburban house, his sleek black car a sharp contrast to the worn picket fence. His hands, which could sign away millions without tremor, shook as he knocked on the door. It opened, and there she was, Isabella. Time had only made her more beautiful, though her eyes carried a guarded pain that cut deeper than any business rival's betrayal. She froze at the sight of him, her lips parting in disbelief. "Alexander," she whispered, his name tasting like both love and hate. He tried to speak, but the small voice interrupted. "Mommy, who's that?" From behind her legs peeked a boy with tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes that mirrored Alexander's own. The breath left his chest. His son, Noah. For a moment, Alexander couldn't move. The empire, the millions, the power, all meaningless compared to the fragile, curious child staring up at him. He dropped to one knee, his voice breaking. "Hello, Noah." The boy tilted his head, clutching Isabella's dress. "Are you a friend of Mommy's?" Isabella's hand tightened on her son's shoulder, her eyes never leaving Alexander. "Inside, Noah. Go get your toys." Reluctantly, the boy obeyed, casting one last curious glance before disappearing down the hall. The silence that followed was suffocating. Isabella crossed her arms, steel in her posture. "What are you doing here?" Alexander swallowed hard. "I didn't know about him." "About Noah?" Pain flickered across her face. "You didn't care to know. You left me." Alexander, without a word. His chest ached, and not from his recent collapse. "I thought I was protecting you. They threatened everything if I didn't end it. I convinced myself you'd be safer without me." Tears welled in her eyes, though her voice was sharp. "Safer? Do you know what it's like raising a child alone, knowing his father chose money over him?" He reached out, but she stepped back. "I made the worst mistake of my life walking away from you," he said hoarsely. "But give me a chance to make it right, please. Let me know my son." Isabella wanted to slam the door in his face. She had rebuilt her life brick by brick after he shattered it, but when she looked at him, she saw not the ruthless heir but the man she once loved, broken and desperate. More than that, she saw the truth in Noah's eyes. He deserved to know his father. With a heavy sigh, she nodded once, "For Noah's sake. But don't you dare hurt him the way you hurt me." Alexander's relief was palpable. For the first time in years, he felt hope. The days that followed were filled with cautious steps. Alexander visited often, leaving behind his corporate armor to sit on the floor building toy castles with Noah or reading bedtime stories in a voice unsteady from emotion he barely understood. Noah, innocent and open, warmed to him quickly, unaware of the history between his parents. Isabella watched from the sidelines, her heart torn. She wanted to hate Alexander, but seeing him with their son awakened the love she had buried. Yet trust was another Madeira. It had been shattered once, and she wasn't sure it could be rebuilt. Then danger came knocking. Word of Isabella and Noah reached the ears of Alexander's enemies, rivals who would do anything to destroy him. One night, as rain lashed the windows, a black SUV loomed outside Isabella's house. Shadows moved in the yard, and Noah's frightened cries pierced the air. Isabella clutched him to her chest, panic surging. Alexander, who had stayed over that evening, recognized the threat instantly. His world was ruthless, unforgiving, and now it had reached the two people he loved most. "Stay with him," he ordered Isabella, his voice like steel. He stormed outside into the rain, facing the man who thought to use his family as leverage. "You came for me," he growled, fists clenched. "You'll regret touching them." The fight was brutal. Alexander, still weakened from his collapse, struggled, but the sight of Isabella clutching Noah in the doorway gave him strength he didn't know he had. He fought like a man possessed, protecting not his fortune but his family. Sirens wailed in the distance as neighbors called the police, and the attackers fled into the night. Shaking, soaked, and bruised, Alexander returned inside. Isabella rushed to him, tears streaming. "You could have been killed." He cupped her face, his voice raw. "I'd rather die than lose you again, both of you." Something in her broke. The walls she had built crumbled. She saw the man she once loved, not the heir who abandoned her. She kissed him through tears, and for the first time in years, hope bloomed between them. In the weeks that followed, Alexander made good on his promise. He stepped back from the ruthless empire, delegating power to Marcus while carving out a life where Isabella and Noah came first. It wasn't easy. Board members rebelled, the press hounded, and enemies circled her, but Alexander didn't falter. He had collapsed once under the weight of his empty empire, but now he stood stronger, carrying the only legacy that mattered, his family. Every night, as he tucked Noah into bed and held Isabella close, Alexander Knight knew he had finally become more than an heir. He had become a husband, a father, and a man worthy of love. And this time, nothing and no empire, no enemy, no fear would ever make him walk away again.